There we go. Okay. So I was at a workshop this weekend with a lovely, amazing spiritual teacher named Dr. Divi, who I had the privilege of learning from when I was in Mexico at a, a mastermind retreat in November. And her teachings were very profound. She's a medical doctor who left her practice to become an intuitive and energetic healer. And she's been teaching about energy and about healing and about our divine nature for many years now. And my husband and I went, and it was very profound. And I want to share a little bit of what she brought forth because I feel like it's valuable for every human being to consider like the roots of guilt and the practice of forgiveness. So the first thing that I want to sort of dive into here is the concept of guilt and what guilt really is. So, guilt is a deeply ingrained emotion that stems from the belief that we are flawed or we're inadequate or we've done something wrong. And Dr. Divi teaches that guilt is not actually inherent truth, but it's actually a reflection just of our human conditioning. It's a projection of our fear of unworthiness onto external circumstances or external situations. So we feel guilty not because we've truly done something wrong, but because at our core, we feel unworthy of love or belonging and divine connection. So this can be found in the yogic teachings. Yoga philosophy tells us that the fear comes from the illusion of separation. So when we think that we're separate beings and everyone else is separate from us, then when we mistakenly believe that, we also realize, or we also have the belief that we're separate from the divine and from the wholeness that's actually our true essence. And when we judge or criticize ourselves or others, we actually reinforce this illusion. So every judgment, whether directed at, whether it's inward or outward, it's an expression of insecurity or a forgetting of our divine nature. Now, here's something that's really interesting. Blame is a discharge of guilt and shame. So, blame and criticism are actually a reflection of an inner guilt or an inner unworthiness. When we blame others, that's a reflection of what's going on inside of us. Because there is no really out here. Out here is a reflection of everything that's in here. And so if you feel like something is wrong, you've been wronged, you're going to look for something out here as the cause of it. But it's really a forgetting. So criticizing and blaming others is a defense mechanism, a way of discharging that guilt and shame. When we feel guilty or ashamed, we project those uncomfortable feelings outward onto someone else. And because it's easier to point the finger at someone else, we then avoid having to do that work of looking at ourselves and going, what is that? And where can I heal that within me? So, for example, if you feel like you're, maybe failing as a parent or a partner, instead of addressing your own guilt, you might blame your spouse or your kids for making things difficult for you. If you feel unworthy at work, you might criticize a colleague or a boss to shift the attention away from your own perceived shortcomings. If you experience a painful event, you might you might blame the person that you believe caused it rather than seeing the deeper lesson our soul chose to experience. Dr. Divi reminded us that there's no time when our soul has been harmed and that we choose our lives and we choose the people coming into it in our lessons, and that even when our bodies are harmed, even when our emotions feel harmed, there's no time when our soul has been harmed. And when we remember that, there's nothing to blame. There's just there's we can let go of all of that. So blame is an externalization of guilt. And it's another way that we forget our divinity because in truth, our soul cannot be harmed. So no matter what happens to us in life, your soul is whole. And when we blame others, we're reinforcing the illusion that we're victims in some way and that we're separate or wronged. But from the higher perspective, nothing can diminish your divine nature. And the more you can rest in that, like you're free. That's true freedom. You don't need to blame anyone else or feel guilty. So, the other piece of guilt is, if you say no to somebody and you feel guilty for that, or you're away from work and Teresa's got her dog on her lap and you go like, feel guilty that you're away from your dog, or like, it just made me think of it, Teresa. And, or you feel guilty for, creating boundaries or something. Again, that's a forgetting of your divine nature. That guilt is a forgetting of your divinity and the other person's divinity. So basically, when we judge, criticize, or blame, we're trying to gain a false sense of control over something that we fear, that we're not good enough. And the truth is that there is never anything wrong with us or anyone else to begin with. The most important realization is that we don't need to forgive ourselves for specific actions. When we feel guilty, if we remember, oh, I feel guilty, okay, it's not really about disappointing the other person or anything to do with the other person. We feel guilty because we feel like we have to do things to prove our worth. That's where the falsity lies. When we feel guilty, it's like we said no or we did something. We have to be a certain way to earn our worth. That's a forgetting of the divine. So here's the biggest practice that I want to share with you. It is not about forgiving yourself for going to work or forgiving yourself for disappointing someone. It's not about focusing on something that you did wrong and forgiving that action. Forgive the thought that you were ever separate from love. Forgive the thought that there was ever anything wrong with you. That's where you want to forgive. Forgive the thought that there was ever anything wrong with you that led you to feel guilty for disappointing someone else. When we practice this form of self-forgiveness, we release the illusion of guilt and we return to our natural state of divine connection. And this is where the practice of Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian forgiveness practice, really comes in. There are 4 lines in Ho'oponopono. And when we look at it from this perspective, they become even more profound in my view. So the first line is, I'm sorry. I love you. Second line is, I'm sorry. Third line is, please forgive me. And the fourth line is, thank you. Now, if we say, I love you, it's like, I love you and the wholeness of divinity, all of us, each other and all things. I'm sorry that I forever forgot that I was part of this all. I'm sorry that I ever forgot that I was divine. I'm sorry that I ever could have had the thought that something was wrong. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. So it's a little great place to slide in the practice of Ho'oponopono to set yourself free. So bringing it into everyday life, when guilt arises, maybe instead of replaying the scenario or justifying your actions, pause and say, I forgive the thought that I was unworthy. Like I forgive the thought that I ever could even be unworthy. When you blame someone else, recognize that their actions cannot harm your soul. Your soul cannot be harmed. And so say to yourself, I forgive the thought that I need to blame to protect myself. My soul is whole. I forgive the thought that I need to blame to protect myself. My soul is whole. And when you judge yourself, place a hand on your heart and say, I am whole, I'm loved, and I am divine. This is such a beautiful teaching. And if you think about how much energy you put into blaming others for your unhappiness or feeling guilty about things you did or did not do, and how much time and space and energy you would free up if you could let go of all of that, this is a pathway, a bridge to freedom. So let's meditate. I have a beautiful guided meditation for you all today. And this meditation is designed to help us release the illusion of separation and guilt. So find a comfortable seat. Let your spine be nice and tall. And close your eyes. And take a really long, deep breath in through your nose. And a big sigh out. And another just like that. Full, long breath in. Open mouth sigh out. And let your breathing return to its natural state. And just let your shoulders soften away from your ears and settle into the rhythm of watching your breath. Now imagine yourself just walking through the world alone. You're moving through crowded streets, alternating with vast open landscapes. But no matter where you go, you feel separate. The world seems maybe distant or incomprehensible at times. And the people around you seem to be closed off or indifferent. Maybe even some of them are out to get you in some way. Everyone's in their own world. And maybe you have a sense that you don't really belong or there's something different about you or wrong about you. A sense of uncertainty, like you should know more or be more, or you have to do something different to fit in. You feel like you have to be on guard, watching for people's reactions and protecting yourself from their judgment. Maybe there's even a familiar voice in your mind whispering, am I doing this right? Do I belong? Am I enough? This way of walking through the world feels heavy, as if you're carrying a burden of guilt and fear and unworthiness. Just notice how this perspective affects your body. Do you feel any tension? A weight in your chest? A feeling of unease? Just observe and notice what you notice. Now, take a deep, full breath in. And as you exhale, feel a shift. Imagine a warm, golden presence beside you. Maybe you see it in the form of light or energy. This presence is pure love, the divine source that has always been with you. Feel its gentle energy wrap around you like a warm embrace. Now imagine reaching out and taking its hand. And as you do, something incredible happens. You're filled with this golden light, and the illusion of separation dissolves. As you start to move through the world, with each step, you feel lighter. You realize you've never been alone. Every moment, every challenge, every experience has been guided by this loving presence. You've always been supported. You are always supported. You are held. You are enough. Now look around and notice that every person you see is also walking hand in hand with the divine. They may not realize it. They may have forgotten, but they are just as connected, just as whole. You no longer see strangers. You see reflections of yourself everywhere. There's no reason to judge, no need to blame. We are all just walking each other home. Breathe into this feeling of connection. Breathe into the love that surrounds you and let it fill every cell of your being. Now imagine looking at the world through new eyes, eyes that see beauty, wonder, and divinity in all things. The same world you walked through before now looks entirely different. Notice. You no longer need to protect yourself because you're already safe. You no longer need to feel guilty because you were never wrong. You no longer need to seek worthiness because you remember that you were born whole. And just sit quietly for a moment with the awareness of the golden light of the divine sitting beside you, holding your hand wrapped around you, embracing all that you are. Now take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, gently bring your awareness back to the present moment. And when you're ready, open your eyes, carrying this feeling of divine connection with you. And as you go about your day, notice how you walk through the world. Are you walking alone, weighed down by guilt or judgment or fear? Or are you walking with the divine, trusting that you're always supported? Whenever you feel yourself slipping back into separation, pause and take a breath and remind yourself, I forgive the thought that I was ever alone. I forgive the thought that I was ever anything less than whole. I walk with love. I walk with peace. I walk with the divine. And how differently would you walk through the world if you reminded yourself that you're always walking with the divine? So I am deeply grateful for all of you today, and for your willingness to show up and learn about these concepts that hopefully lead us all a little closer to freedom. I'm going to stop that.